Hello, YouTube. This is Scott Levin with our next episode of Get to Know. Thank you for joining us. We have a really special guest, a real Buffalo booster, James Sandoro. Most people call him Jim, his good friends.
Yep.
He's from Buffalo. We're at the Pierce Aero Museum right here in downtown Buffalo. Jim, thanks for joining us. We really appreciate it.
Scott.
Thanks for taking your time today.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Let's start with, first of all, you grew up here in Buffalo. You're a native Buffalonian. You're one of us.
One of many millions of people, but happily to have lived in Buffalo. And actually, my friends around the country said how lucky I was to be born in Buffalo, being the car guy that I am.
And what is it about Buffalo that was so great growing up here?
Well, we started on Lisbon Avenue.
Lisbon
over
Avenue.
St. Joseph's. I went to St. Joseph's Grammar School, and then I went to Bennett and met wonderful people. Bennett was one of the top schools at the time. And but as a young boy, our neighborhood had a lot of German guys that were into automobiles. And the man next door had a Pierce Aero up on blocks that he was sort of hiding from the government. You were supposed to scrap them during World War II to make the airplanes.
Rubber?
No, the cast aluminum bodies.
Oh, the cast aluminum
Pierce was
bodies.
the only company that had cast aluminum bodies, so it was easy to take those bodies apart and make them into airplanes and melt it down, and they needed aluminum. But the owners would give them with a wink and nod, say, James, take this to the scrapyard. Well, they knew they weren't taking this fantastic Pierce Aero to a scrapyard. So he put it up on blocks, and I was 3.5. There's a picture of me in front of the garage.
You used to slide down it, right?
We slid down the fenders on it, and he had a fit. And to shut me up, he'd give me buttons and pins and photos of cars. And then I said, wow, the other old guys in the neighborhood. And I'd go interview them and do trick or treat, kept bugging them. And they'd give me more stuff. So by the time I'm 9, the basement's full. My mother said, what are you going to do with all these things? I said, I'm going to have a car museum. Oh, we also went to the Henry Ford. My aunt lived in Detroit, so we took a trip to Detroit, and they took me, and I saw the Henry Ford Museum, the cars, the airplanes, the locomotives. I said, that's what I want to do. And that's what I did. At 18, my mother didn't talk to me for months. I moved out of the house and moved down here across the street on Myrtle Avenue, in a little garage, and started to restore cars.
So let's go back again. You grew up on Lisbon Avenue. You go to Bennett.
Yeah.
What about your life? Married, kids? Tell everybody about
Didn't get married.
Your life, who you are.
Yeah, till I was probably 28 or 29. Dated a lot. I actually went to Detroit and had my restoration business. I started in '62. Had guys working for me. Went to Detroit and had an employment agency. My aunt had a bad operation. Yeah,
really?
My aunt had a bad operation and had an employment agency. Asked me to go for 2 months to help her while she was in the hospital. And at the end of the time, I'm ready to move back. I had a girlfriend in Buffalo, and she said, you're really good at this. You ought to really have your own employment agency. Now, believe it or not, I was doing antique car business in Detroit because that was a hotbed of restoration activity and things. And so I did. I opened my own agency, and after 2 years, I was there during the riots, which is a whole other thing that happened at that time.
That's right.
I sold it to Snelling & Snelling, the largest in the world.
Employment
agency, and moved back to Buffalo, and had a wonderful relationship with a gal in Buffalo, and this is all tied to cars. George Schuster, who went around the world in 1908, Bill Harrah from Reno, who I knew, was going to come to Buffalo and give him his check for $1,000 at the Statler Hotel on this date in, I believe it was April of '69. And I was going with this gal that I was going out with. It was a big deal for me because I was sitting at the head table.
Right.
I knew Bill Harrah and George Schuster, and we had New York Times was here. Big deal in the automotive world because he never got his check for $1,000 for going around the world. So the gal that I was going with at the last minute, she worked for American Airlines, said, oh, I just got passes to go to Acapulco. I can't go with you. For some reason, I said, and I never did an ultimatum, I said, if you go, we're through. That's it. This is important to me. So she went. I went out to a bar called the Poorhouse East on Transit Road. I didn't drink. I didn't smoke. but I went to listen to the music.
Okay.
Met a couple gals there and went out. And the next day, my friend George liked the gal I was talking to. Said, "Will you call the other girl? I got her number." And I said, "What? You call her?" No, you call her. So I called the other girl. I said, "Hi, we didn't get to talk. Would you like to go to lunch?" She said, "I don't go out with married guys." I said, "Well, what made you think I'm married?" She said, "You drive a station wagon." I said, "I drive a station wagon because I'm in the antique car business, and I do this and I do that. And I just got a Pierce motorcycle, a 1969 Pierce motorcycle."
Right.
And she said, "Is it a one-cylinder or a
Oh,
four-cylinder?"
she said, "Is it a 1 or a 4-cylinder?"
And I said, "How would you know that?" She said, "I'm curator of exhibits at the Historical Society." And we never went out with anybody else after that. We went out and we were married the next year, and we've been 50 years. It'll be 50 years this October.
Congratulations.
Yeah, I
That's
met
amazing.
the right gal,
She
the
asked
most
whether
wonderful.
it was 1 or a 4-cylinder.
One or a four-cylinder. No one would know. She knew all about Thomas Flyer. She knew all
Right.
this history that I didn't even know at the time. And
So you moved
yep,
back to Buffalo.
Yep.
How old were you when you moved back to Buffalo?
Probably 26, 27. But I was
26.
always commuting. I commuted
Commute.
every week. So Buffalo was always home, but
Okay.
I commuted to
So you
other
get
places.
back to Buffalo, and
Yep.
how were you earning a living?
The antique cars, the restoration. I had 9
So
men
that was your
working.
business. You were restoring antique cars
My whole
for
life.
people all over the country here in Buffalo.
My whole life. And I kept investing in Buffalo. I'd go to the auctions and buy different properties all around me just to protect it and clean up. It wasn't a great area at that time at Michigan and Seneca area. And I would keep on buying more buildings because I needed the space for cars, including this building we're in was a Mack truck dealership. I bought it just to store cars while we were waiting to do the restoration of it.
So you're in your 20s, you're in your 30s, you're still doing the restoration of cars, and that's how you're earning your living. You're living your life,
Plus,
plus
the auction business.
the auction business. Tell us about
Brand new thing that car auctions in the 1970s, early 70s, antique car auctions, and started with different people. I get in with a guy who I got to be friends with out of Dayton, Ohio, a guy named Leo Gephardt, and we form a company called Auction America. And Auction America did 15 to 20 auctions all over the country. Our first one was at the Saddle and Bridle Club in Buffalo on Amherst Street. And I became really the chief operating officer. I went next city. After one was finished, I finished. And we had Movie World Cars of the Stars. I got to meet movie stars, and it was a fantastic business. And we had the first auction in Scottsdale, Arizona.
Where now they
for
have
3
them all the
years.
time.
Well, a guy by the name of Russ Jackson was one of our partners.
Jackson Hewitt.
Russ Jackson. No, the
Jack-
other
not
Jackson.
Jackson Hewitt. I'm
Barrett
talking-
Jackson.
Barrett Jackson, right.
We
Right,
sold
Barrett
out.
Jackson.
We sold the company because it was more important to keep a marriage
Right.
and do what I wanted to do, and it was tiring to do all that. And we sold out to, and it became Barrett Jackson, which is one of the biggest.
Which is
in the
all over.
world.
It's on television now.
Biggest in
Everybody
the
can
world.
watch
We
it.
had a office in Arizona in Scottsdale. Actually, 15 years we kept it even after we sold that. And
Because they still
yeah,
do
so-
an auction in Scottsdale.
Oh, gigantic!
Yeah.
And now in Connecticut and in
Right.
Florida, yeah. they're
So
all-
let's talk about, we're in this beautiful museum here. This is world class. People all over the world come to see this right here in downtown Buffalo. If you haven't seen it, come down and you'll be really amazed.
Yeah.
Where did your love of Pierce Arrow come into play in your life? And give us a little background as to how important Buffalo was to Pierce Arrow
Well,
and Pierce Arrow to Buffalo.
the little boy thing with the car up on thing, because he kept telling me it was one of the greatest cars of the 20th century. It was the official White House car from Taft to Roosevelt. Potentates and J. Edgar Hoover, all these people had Pierces. That's what got me. And then my family moved over to Middlesex, and right near the plant. And while I'm out there looking for artifacts, my friends are breaking the windows, but I'm out there looking for car parts out there. So Pierce was just in my blood, so deep in my blood. And I got to know everybody. Anything that, if a guy had a Pierce hubcap, they'd give it to me or I'd acquire it. I just kept building and building and building and more knowledge about the company.
And tell folks at home, they actually manufactured those vehicles right here in Buffalo.
Starting at the waterfront at
Right.
Prime in Hanover, George Pierce started after the Civil War making bird cages and ice boxes. Then when the bicycle craze came in, the standard bikes, not the high wheelers, safety bike, as we know
Right,
it now,
safety bike, right.
he started in 91, but his were unique. He had the patent for a shock absorber under the seat. He had a spring front end. but he had shaft drive, which nobody else had, that allowed women to be able to ride now without their petticoats getting caught up in the greasy chain. And that changed the whole world. He was making tens of thousands of bikes and shipping them all over the world. I still get people write me from Europe and all over that have Pierce bikes and want to know more about the company.
What makes a Pierce Aero automobile so special?
The quality of the people. All these Germans and English guys, engineers, came up the Erie Canal. They got to Buffalo and they saw the water power and they saw the electric power and they said, wow, we're machinists. Climate's similar to Europe. This is a great place. We're going to settle here. And they did. And they started to make carriages and bicycles. And then, of course, when automobiles came in. But George Pierce, it was quality. They would take a Pierce like this 1904. They may have taken it apart 3 times, run it around with a box on the chassis. And before you sold that to a potentate in wherever in Europe, it was going to be perfect. Pierce never had a repair manual in 37 years. You sent your mechanic to the factory to learn how to work on them. That's how special they were.
So every Pierce Aero that was on the road rolled out of Buffalo.
Everyone. Well, they did make a few outside of Windsor, I think in 37, 38, but everything was Buffalo. No matter where they went, everything. The chassis mostly came from Buffalo. They may have assembled in Windsor for the Canadian market. But yeah.
Let's talk about this incredible museum. Tell the folks at home how big it is, how many cars are in here, how you got the idea to start this museum.
Well, in '97, all my friends said to me, when are you going to shut up and start this museum that you keep wanting to do? And this building was available. It was Mack Truck, and there were walls here. There were offices and then a showroom. And I knocked a hole in this wall, and then I knocked a hole, and I looked out here, and I saw all this area here without any pillars. I said, let's start it here and do it here. So we did, and got the nonprofit started in '97, and then slowly started to bring things from our other storage buildings and put them on display. We had the Philharmonic Ball here in 2000 was the first event, because we said people loved that.
Event, I remember
it was a huge event,
yes.
A huge event. And slowly we started to move things in, and then people would start to give us things because we're a nonprofit. They could get a tax write-off, but also they saw that we were serious about keeping this stuff here for 100 years. And so this is 20,000 square feet. In 2000, we came up with the Frank Lloyd Wright filling station. And that's a whole story in itself, how that ever happened. But it was designed for Buffalo, right on Michigan, 5 blocks up. We bought the plans and the rights to the plans from the Frank Lloyd Wright Foundation and built, which is now the most famous gas station in the world. We put a new addition on at that time. The state of New York helped us with that, by the way, to do it, because we said, look, we need help build a ship. We're in the right position. We're in Michigan, the entryway to the waterfront. We know what we're doing. We have the stuff to put in it. We need the ship. So they helped us put another 35,000 additional space over there.
Tell the folks at home if they want to come by, when you're open, is there a charge?
Well, right now we're in January, so we are open in February around President's Day. We take off this 6 weeks just to start sprucing up and also getting new exhibits ready for the coming year. But starting February, we'll start to have regular hours, and usually Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and it expands as we get into the warmer weather, it goes. In the future, when we do the future plans, we'll probably be open every day of the year, other than maybe holidays.
Now, I know that there is one vehicle in here that you are extremely proud of. It is this one right here, this gorgeous carriage here.
Yep.
It's a 1904 Pierce Aero that just got here, all restored. There's only 2 in the world. Tell the folks at home about how special this particular Pierce Aero
This is so special. I didn't know it existed. I only knew about the Henry Ford car, which is just a 2-passenger roadster unrestored. This came up at auction. We were able to acquire it, and through the Bill and Jean Err Foundation, acquire this car. It's going to be here forever in the museum, and it's spectacular. It's the first 2-cylinder that Pierce really made, and it was something that led the tours. Pierce won the first 8 Glidden tours, which are the most important tours in the world at the time, won every time first place. 1,000 points out of 1,000 points. Means they didn't even get a flat tire on the tour.
Wow.
Never had to make an adjustment of a carburetor in 1,000 miles. That's how the quality of this.
And this still runs. You can
This
take it out
still
and
runs.
drive it
We
today.
can take it. The gentleman had it before, took it on London to Brighton, 90 miles in England. He flew it over into England and took it. It's been to Pebble Beach, and we're going to use it.
So tell folks at home, why is it so important to keep this stuff and put it on display and to show the history? Why is that important?
Well, it's important because it's world branding. It was branded around the world. People, it wasn't just a Buffalo thing. It spread out around the world. The history of Pierce, and people knew if they bought a Pierce, it was quality. It was a snobbish thing in a way because other people had Model Ts that were $400, and the Pierce could be $8,000, $10,000.
Oh, really?
Just to show you the difference in cost. Yeah.
Oh, I had no idea that it was that much more.
Yeah.
Wow. All right, so before we go, people just want to get to know a little bit more about you. A couple more questions.
Sure.
What are some of your hobbies other than automobiles? Do you have any other hobbies, or is it just automobiles?
No, I have no time for any other
No
hobbies.
time for anything.
This is
So
my
it's
life.
automobiles all the time.
Every day,
What
every
about food?
moment.
What are your favorite restaurants in town? Where do
Well,
you like
of course,
to
the
go?
Buffalo Chop House. And my late friend Mark
Your
Croce
late friend Mark Croce.
did a fabulous job.
He did.
And everybody said they couldn't have a high-end steakhouse in Buffalo.
He
Well,
did it.
He did it all right. He did a lot of great things. We love that. We go to chefs. We go to all, we love to stay in Buffalo. Once in a while, we'll venture out. We live right here. We've lived here for 50
Downtown?
years across the street. We live across the street from here. I couldn't leave all this.
Right. Are you a
alone.
dog guy, cat guy?
No, we had two
Pets?
dogs, but now it's a little too much for us to be able to go out and walk dogs anymore.
Where do you like to vacation?
I go to Peru a lot. I set up a
Peru?
restoration shop 35 years ago for a wealthy Peruvian, and we have a museum in Lima that I put together for him, and so I've been there 145 times. So I go there, and Marianne loves Virgin Gorda in the Virgin Islands, and she goes with her friends there.
That Virgin Gorda, I believe, is a volcanic island.
And it
right?
got wiped out by the hurricane 2 years
Recently.
ago.
That's right.
And the house that they used to stay in is no longer even in existence.
Okay, and what kind of car do you drive personally?
I have my old Mercury, 2006 Mercury. That
2006
my
Mercury
dad
Marquis
had
with
that
how many
car.
miles?
That was at 89,000 miles. My dad drove that car. We bought it specially, and then he passed away, so I just drive it. But we have a new Lincoln that we get from West Hair, of course.
Right. If you could have any dream car right now, what would you buy? Modern car. There's got to be something.
It doesn't matter to me.
It doesn't matter to you.
It's more important than that.
More important than that.
Pierce would be more important.
All right, last question before I let you go. What is it about Buffalo that you love? Why do you stay in Buffalo? What is that thing, if you could put your finger on it, about Buffalo that you love so much?
Just so many things. The people, the food, the weather. I mean, really, the weather. People are jealous that we restored all these cars. We had the best cars restored because we had winter time to work on them here. And other people, they drive them all year round, and it doesn't matter as much. Here, there's such a quality of life that's it's unbelievable. And the friends you still have after 40, 50 years. We lived in Arizona part-time. We had property in Florida. We had all those things. Buffalo has always been home, and this is where we want to stay and live forever.
Well, you have done a great job here, Jim.
Thank
I
you.
always love coming by here.
Thank you,
and
Scott.
if you ever get a chance and you're in downtown Buffalo or you know someone who's coming here, stop by. Jim's around here, and you'll be amazed at the history that you see in here.
Yeah.
James Sandoro, a real Buffalo booster and the proprietor of the Pierce Aero Museum here in downtown Buffalo. Great to have you on board.
Thank you very much, Scott.
Thanks for joining us on Get to Know.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. We'll see you next time.